Hello and welcome to Profit Visibility Lab. Last week in Hustle to Flow, we exposed the tactic thrash pattern. And today in Profit Visibility Lab, we go deeper because even though we identified the pattern, a pattern is not a constraint. And so how the way that we go deeper is we identify where the tension is, and that will help us to identify the constraint, right? We're entering into loop two. Loop two is about control, and control is about identifying the tension to lead us to the pattern, to identify the constraint, to be able to know what to fix and to move forward. So we'll get started. So the first thing is we touched on it last week, but what we want to talk about is what does tactic thrash look like? What does that pattern look like? And so let's start there. Messaging shifts, the offer tweaks. You're constantly tweaking your offer. You're pivoting from channel to channel. It's LinkedIn, then it's YouTube. You're moving around, and then you're switching tools. Today I need one tool. The next day I need another tool. And then you're stacking launches one on top of the other, right? The pattern tells you instability exists, but it does not tell you where it lives. So when we misdiagnose instability, we don't just waste time. We reinforce the wrong constraint. We add complexity. We burn cash. And we train our team to react instead of inspect. This is where control begins to erode. This is the streamline and scale operating grid. This is how I locate structural constraints. So what you'll notice about this grid is it aligns to our pattern families. So spotlight is where demand is clarified. Offer is where messaging is where conversion is stabilized. The activate quadrant is where cash is activated. And the retain quadrant is where capacity is sustained. Now, let's take this a step further because this is where we go deep and look at a couple of examples that happen in the quadrants, okay? So let's look at an offer constraint. So we've got, in this case, a founder. He's at 750,000 annual revenue, and there's some symptoms that exist within his business, okay? We've got marketing changes every few weeks. We've got new lead magnets, and ads are being turned on and off. The assumption is that there's a demand problem, right? We think it's over in spotlight quadrant. But let's scan verbally, right? So if we start in the upper left with spotlight, demand is stable. If we move to the right quadrant and look at offer, The offer is unstable. The close rate is 11%, and the sales narrative is inconsistent. In this case, the pattern was real, but the diagnosis was wrong. We thought we had a demand problem, but what we really had was an offer problem. Okay. Now, let's look at a second case study. In this case, we're going to travel to the lower left quadrant and look at a retain constraint. So in this example, let's have a 1.2 million annual revenue founder. And what we're looking at here is flash discounts. They're running flash discounts. There's revenue anxiety and launch stacking. The assumption, we need more leads. We need more leads. But let's scan. Let's take a look at the operating grid. Spotlight, the demand is actually strong. The offer is actually stable. And even the activate is aligned. But what's happening is the retention is unstable. We can get the clients in, we can get the revenue in, but we don't know how to keep it. So we keep having to run these sales and these promotions to get more in, and instead of optimizing the ones that we have, right? We thought it was a demand problem, but it was over here in the retain quadrant as a capacity constraint. Right? Our ability to retain those particular customers. So tactic thrash is often compensatory behavior. So visibility shows you the smoke. The operating grid shows you where to inspect. Control is not reacting faster. It's locating tension accurately. So if you've been seeing this type of recurring instability in your business, okay, and you want to understand whether a structural distortion exists, then the snapshot is the right place to begin. Localization requires a deeper diagnostic work. Until next time, let's not fix anything. Let's identify the constraint. Okay. Whoop. Thank you for thinking carefully.